It's time to make it. Just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Welcome to this episode of You Can Make It with David Farrell, the old fat guy. Today I'm going to make one of my favorites, which is a shrimp po' boy slider. Now what po' boys are is a sandwich that's served a lot in the deep south. It's a big hero type bun, and they cover it with a remoulade that's spicy Cajun sauce, and then they load it up with all kinds of different things, usually shrimp, lettuce, and tomato. But it's too much for an old guy like me to eat a whole po' boy in one setting, so I thought, why not make it an appetizer or smaller and make them into sliders? And that's what I've done, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to make up a half of what I normally do recipe. But you can multiply this or go to my blog, oldfatguy.ca, to see how to make up a double the amount. But the first thing you need are 12 medium-sized shrimp. You can use prawns as well, just a different name for them. And these ones came frozen and were already shelled and deveined. If they're not shelled and deveined, you have to peel the shells off and do a slice down the back to get the vein out. But these ones still have the tail on, so you just want to squeeze that tail piece off because you want no shells in your sandwich. Once we've got the shrimp ready, what we have to do is set up what they call a breading station. And this is a classic breading station I'll be doing that's been used in classical cooking for whatever. And what you do in a breading station is you start with a flour dredge. And what I have here is 75 milliliters or a third cup of flour. And to that, I'm going to add 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of Cajun seasonings. Now you can go to the store and buy a jar of Cajun seasonings. I make my own. Again, the recipe's on my blog. But put the 5 milliliters into the flour and mix it together well. That's the first layer of seasonings on our shrimp. Now the next part of a breading station is what they call an egg wash. And what happens is the flour sticks to the shrimp, which makes the egg wash stick to the flour. So you got to put some egg in, so we'll start with an egg. And if you're making double this recipe, you'd still only want to use 1 egg in this amount because 1 egg makes a lot of egg wash. But I've got 1 egg in there, and I'm going to add 50 milliliters or a quarter of a cup of milk. And to that, I'm going to add about 2 milliliters or a milliliter, depending how spicy you like it, of Tabasco sauce. And we're going to beat that together and make what they call an egg wash. Now that I've got the egg wash done, I'm going to make a bread dredge. And that's breadcrumbs to give us a nice crispy coat on our shrimp. I'm using what they call panko breadcrumbs, which is a Japanese style breadcrumb that stays crisper and gives a much crisper result in your breading. You can use regular breadcrumbs, but it will work out better with panko breadcrumbs. And to that I'm going to add 5 milliliters of the Cajun, 4 milliliters or 3/4 of a teaspoon of the Cajun seasoning. And we're just going to mix that together with the breadcrumbs. There we are. And we are now ready to do the breading of the shrimp. Now the way you do breading is you want to make sure you keep this hand dry for taking the shrimp out so you don't end up with a bunch of stuff clumped up. So just shake all the stuff so it's flat. And we're going to put 3 or 4 of the shrimp in the flour and just toss them around to get them covered with flour. And then we're going to put them into the egg wash and just flip them over so they get totally covered with egg wash. And then after the egg wash, they go into the breadcrumbs and put them on the breadcrumbs so there's some underneath them. And then you want to shovel with your dry hand breadcrumbs over the top of them. And once you've done that, you can take these out without messing this hand up. But you'll see they're nicely covered with breadcrumbs. And we're just going to put them on a tray, getting ready to go into be cooked. Now, most po' boys are made with deep fried shrimp. I don't like deep frying. I find it messy and it puts a lot of extra fat in your diet. So I'm going to be baking these in an oven. Now I'm going to repeat the steps you saw with the remaining 8 shrimp, and I'll see you when I'm done. I'm just finishing up the last of my shrimp here. There we go. And there we go. We have 12 shrimp, well breaded, and they're all ready to get cooked. I'm just going to bring a little toaster oven out here and I'll be with you in a minute. Now, you can cook the shrimp in an oven. I'm just going to use my little toaster oven here. You can cook them in a smoker at 425 degrees or an oven at 425 degrees. You can even cook them in your barbecue if you light one burner and leave the other burner off and put them over the side that's not heated up and just cook them till they're brown. But the easiest way to do it is in an oven. So I'm going to take the shrimp and I'm going to cook them in my toaster oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So just put the shrimp on the tray you're going to cook them in. Leave a little bit of space between them so they can get some nice browning. There we go. Now these will take about 15 minutes to cook, or depending on your oven, maybe as long as 20. I find they're usually done at 15 minutes though, so I'll see you back in 15 minutes. While the shrimp is cooking, we're going to make something called a Cajun Remoulade sauce. Remoulade's just a fancy name for a mayonnaise-based sauce, but the Cajuns like a lot of spice in their food, so we're going to jazz it up. What we have here is 40 milliliters or 3 tablespoons of mayonnaise. And to that we're going to add 8 milliliters or a teaspoon and a half of ketchup. We're going to add 8 milliliters or a teaspoon and a half of finely chopped dill pickle. We're going to add 5 milliliters of chili sauce, just the stuff you get in the store. We're going to get 2 milliliters of Dijon mustard or half a teaspoon. We've got 1/4 milliliter of horseradish and 1/4 milliliter or a 1/4 teaspoon of Cajun spice. We also have 2 milliliters or a little under half a teaspoon of pickle juice just from the jar of pickles, and we're going to give it a dash of hot sauce as well. So we're just going to put all those things into a bowl with the mayonnaise. There we go. And then add the pickle sauce or pickle juice. And a quick dash of hot sauce, and give it a stir up to make our remoulade. And once you've got it mixed up, you want to give it a quick taste just to make sure that it's the way you want it. Perfect. Now, because these are sliders, you want them to go on small buns, which can be hard to find. So what I just do is take a hot dog bun, open it up, spread some remoulade on both half. Get a lot on there. You want it to be tasty. This is a big flavored Cajun dish. There we go. And do the other half. And then take this hot dog bun and cut it into thirds to give you 3 small buns out of each hot dog. There you go. Your hot dog bun is now 3 small slider buns. And we're just waiting for the shrimp to finish cooking. So you can see that our shrimp are cooked and they got a nice brown crispy coating on them, which is exactly what you're looking for, and it's time to put our sliders together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of the slider pieces and we're going to put 2 shrimp on each one, because you want a big sloppy messy slider. That's what a po' boy is. So you're just going to take the shrimp and put 2 on the buttered bun. And then traditionally what it has is a slice of tomato and a little bit of lettuce. And then you just put the top on and squish her down. And we're going to do that with all 6 of the bun sections we have. I'll see you in a second. I'm just putting my last po' boy together and putting it on the plate. And isn't that a great looking plate of appetizers? So let's just try one. So delicious. The shrimp is rich and luscious. The Cajun remoulade gives it a touch of spice. The tomato gives it a rich flavor, and the lettuce gives it a bit of bite. This is an incredible slider, and of course, you can make them.
In this episode, David made shrimp po' boy sliders. The ingredients used were 12 medium shrimp, 75 milliliters of flour, 5 milliliters of Cajun seasoning, 1 egg, 50 milliliters of milk, 3 milliliters of hot pepper sauce, 75 milliliters of panko breadcrumbs, 4 milliliters of Cajun seasoning, 2 hot dog buns, 6 slices of tomato, and lettuce. For the Cajun remoulade, the ingredients are 40 milliliters of mayonnaise, 8 milliliters of ketchup, 8 milliliters of dill pickle, finely chopped, 5 milliliters of chili sauce, 2 milliliters of Dijon mustard, 2 milliliters of dill pickle juice, 1 milliliter of prepared horseradish, 1 milliliter of Cajun seasoning, and 1 dash of hot pepper sauce. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, as David would say, you can make it. It's time to make it. Just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
In today's episode of You Can Make It with the Old Fat Guy, that's me, we're going to make one-pot beef stroganoff. Now, I love beef stroganoff. Normally it's made from braised meat that you have to brown and you have to cook noodles on the side, and you end up with 3 or 4 dirty pots, but we're all busy these days and we all want to spend a little less time in the kitchen. So this is an easy version that just uses the one pot. Now, I'm using my electric griddle just so you can see what's happening. Normally you just make it in the pot on the stove. And we start off by putting 15 milliliters or a tablespoon of olive oil into a medium hot pan. And I've already preheated this pan, so it's ready to go. And then we're going to add 225 grams or a half pound of sliced mushrooms to the oil. And we're just going to fry these for 3 or 4 minutes until they get soft and a bit of color. So just bear with me and I'll be right back to show you. The mushrooms have been cooking for 3 to 4 minutes, and you can see they've shrunk up, given off quite a bit of water that's evaporated, and they're just getting a little bit of that sort of tan color to them. So they're ready to be taken out, because if you leave them in for the rest of the cook, the mushrooms will overcook and won't give the great texture they do to stroganoff. So we're just going to take these out and set them aside. Once we've got the mushrooms out of the pan, we're going to add 40 milliliters or 3 tablespoons of butter to the pan and let it melt. That'll just take a minute. You can see the butter's just about melted. And when we get that last little bit just to melt on, we're going to add 3/4 of a medium onion that I've chopped up and 2 cloves of garlic that I chopped up pretty fine to the butter. And we're going to cook these, again, 3 to 4, maybe even 5 minutes until the onions and garlic are just nice and soft. It's been 3 or 4 minutes, and you can see the onions are not browned. You do not want to brown them for this recipe, but they're just getting a little translucent and soft. That's exactly what you're looking for. And we're now going to add 454 grams or 1 pound of ground beef. You can use lean or regular depending on how much fat you like in your food. It doesn't matter that much. Just break it in chunks like that, because you want it broken up. You don't want it in meatballs. You want it in little pieces of beef. And once you have it all broken in, now you just want to cook it, breaking it up with your spatula. Again, you want it in little pieces, not big chunks. So we're going to cook it until the beef is totally brown and cooked through, which will take a few minutes. And we're going to keep breaking it up. 3 or 4 minutes have gone by, and I've got the beef. You see there's no pink in there any longer, and I've been breaking it up into small pieces so it's all crumbled. And that means it's cooked. Now if you use regular ground beef and there's a lot of fat in here, you can drain it off, but because we're making a flour-based roux, you don't have to. It's strictly if you want to take a little bit of fat out of your diet. This was lean beef, so there's no need to drain this at all. And now we're going to add our seasonings. And for our seasonings for this dish, we're going to use 5 milliliters each, or 1 teaspoon of paprika, rosemary, and thyme, and 3 milliliters, or a little over half a teaspoon of pepper. And we're just going to add those to the ground beef, and we're going to cook for 1 minute just to sweat the seasonings, which lets a little bit more flavor out of them. So we'll just do this for a minute. We've stirred the seasonings in for a minute. They're definitely giving off a good odor. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the fat that's in the pan together with some flour to make a roux, so we get a nice thick sauce on our stroganoff. So to this, I'm going to add 40 milliliters or 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Just sprinkle it over it and stir it in and cook for 1 more minute. The flour is well mixed in, and it's starting to stick a bit at the bottom, which don't worry about. That'll give a nice color to the sauce. Now we're going to add 1 liter or 4 cups of beef broth or stock. And we're also going to add some sherry. And I just use cooking sherry, and I use 50 milliliters or 1/4 cup of sherry. You can use real sherry, but cooking sherry is cheaper. And then we're going to add 10 milliliters of Worcester sauce, or Worcestershire sauce, or whatever you want to call it. Worcestershire sauce, I believe, is the correct one. So we'll add 10 milliliters. And we just want to stir that to get the flour off the bottom of the pot and mixed into the liquid. There we go. Just make sure you scrape all the stuff up off the bottom because it's tasty and brings great color. And once you've got it added, you're going to put in 1 liter or 4 cups of egg noodles. I like nice broad egg noodles, but you use any kind of egg noodles you like. And you add that to the liquid. And make sure it's all nice under the liquid and wet. Stir it in. Okay, and we're just going to wait a minute till this comes to a boil. This has just come to a boil. You can see nice lots of bubbles coming around the surface, so we just want to turn the heat down so that it will stay at a low boil. And we're going to put a lid on it and let it sit for 10 to 12 minutes until the noodles are totally cooked. I'll see you then. It took 12 minutes for the noodles to get done, but you got to make sure they're ready. So we're just going to fish a little bit of one out of here. See my little piece there, somewhere in there. And make sure that it's cooked through. Just perfect. Just a little bit of chew. That's called al dente. It's just the way you want it. So what we're going to do now is add back in the mushrooms. There we go. And now we're going to turn the heat off. And add in 125 milliliters or 1/2 cup of sour cream. That's one of the main identifying ingredients of stroganoff. So now that we've got the sour cream all stirred in, you'll never guess what comes next. We get to taste it, or at least I do. You don't. Nya nya. I'm just going to get myself a bowl and try myself some stroganoff. Look at that, nice slurpy noodles and a rich sauce. This is absolutely something I've been looking forward to all day. The mushrooms and the noodles give a great slurpy, chewy texture that even kids would love. The sour cream gives it a richness. The beef adds a really deep, meaty flavor. The beef broth makes a great gravy. This is a terrific stroganoff, and the best part is you can make it.
In this episode, David made 1 pot stroganoff. The ingredients used were 15 milliliters of olive oil, 225 grams of sliced mushrooms, 40 milliliters of butter, 3/4 of a medium onion chopped, 2 cloves of garlic chopped, 455 grams of ground beef, 5 milliliters each of paprika, thyme, and rosemary, 3 milliliters of pepper, 40 milliliters of flour, 1 liter of beef broth, 50 milliliters of sherry, 10 milliliters of Worcestershire sauce, 1 liter of egg noodles, and 125 milliliters of sour cream. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. As David would say, you can make it.